Hey, how's it going? So we're gonna be doing this, which is carousel. Okay. Now note the buttons get disabled when you click. There is a reason for that. So all the code is gonna be in here. Now this is the vanilla JavaScript from developed by Ed. You can see where I got the idea from. Kind of, I got idea mostly from him. Right, so and then there is logic in here. Now, I'll tell you up front, this is not an easy code, right? Let's just say it's not for beginners, right? If you were a beginner, I'd probably suggest going with this one first, like understanding the code. Otherwise, you're gonna get absolutely confused in here, right? I also use frameworks like Sass, class names. So, I mean, look at the code. I mean, it's not exactly it's not exactly super easy, okay? But I'll try my best to explain it, okay? All right. So let's probably get started then. So I'm going to clean my. So I need to get rid of all of this. So this is the code, because we're starting from scratch. Right, I'm gonna leave the imports, because I'm assuming you know how to do imports, right? So we're basically gonna start with a blank slate. That's what we're gonna do. And then we get rid of all the Okay. Alright, so now we have a blank canvas, right? So you're not gonna need this too. You only need use state, use ref. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is to create a state. No, actually, well, let's do that. So you can call it index. I call it just count. Set count, right? So this will track where is. Screw it, let's just call it index. Index of item. No, actually, I'll stick to count, because then you're gonna get confused with the docs. So this basically tracks the index of the visible element in the canvas. And we're gonna start with 1. Now the reason why we're starting with 1 is because normally you want to start with 0, but because we're creating dummy, we're creating basically dummy elements to create a transition. Jeez, man, like I just try to make it simple. I just don't understand how to make it simpler. So, okay, I'll probably do it without dummy elements first, so you'll be able to see it. Okay, so this is gonna be our main container, and let's give it. I have like specific borders. I'll put them. You see, so DRR stands for add red border. DBB stands for add. It's kind of like my global classes, so I'll add them into the code as well. I call them Dmitry borders. It just makes it easier for me to visually see. So Dmitry borders. So I added them in here, so you'll be able to see them now. Oops. You see? There they are. Like, you can add them in here. We'll just add them in here so you'll be able to see them, you know, like this. Normally I put them into global styles, but I mean, whatever. Right, okay, so this is going to be our main canvas. Okay. The next thing we want to do is we want to add, well, let's want to add a div, and this will be class name. This will be like a box that holds the items, right? We can call it frame maybe, right? Just call it frame. Now in my docs I'm using bem, which is a block element modifier as class naming convention, but in here I'm gonna be using, actually I'm just trying to make it, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to make it as easy as possible. Okay, so we're gonna just use standard classes, otherwise you might get confused. So let's add blue border to this. Okay, so now let's position. So we're gonna center everything inside the main container, right? And then we're gonna give our frame a, let's say, I don't know what we're gonna do it. Width, let's do 300, height, let's do 300 pixels as well. And maybe let's add some padding in here. Let's do 40 pixels, maybe like this. Yeah. So you see now it sits inside the box. Okay, so the next thing we need to do, we need to create a div slider box. Let's give it yellow. DYY is yellow. So basically this box inside, right, so you can think about this as a frame, and then we're gonna have elements inside of this yellow box, and we're gonna be moving yellow box via transition, transform, translate Y by whatever the size of the box is, which is 300 pixels. Well, we have to factor in borders as well, so it's going to be like 298, right? So it's going to be moving left and right based on the transition. So that's the basic principle behind it, right? So let's create okay, so let's map should I add height to the box? I think I should, yeah. So we basically make them exactly the same. So slider box width 300 pixels, height 300 pixels as well, right? We need to probably minus 1. Or we can do 100% as well. That's probably gonna work as well. But height has to be 290%, I think, right? Maybe 298 even. Whoops. Yeah, huh, interesting. Actually, no, we cannot do that. Because the slider box... Yeah, slider box should not have width. Yeah, it should not. Because slider box will consist of elements that we're gonna move, and the elements are gonna determine its height, which is gonna be the same as the frame. Okay, so now we need to put items into it, right? So we first need to import data from import data from, where's our data? I think it's in here somewhere. Is it in views? Where did I put the data? Oh, data is in here. I'm trolling. There's the data. Okay, so that's gonna be the data. We're importing it, right? So we're gonna be mapping through it. Data.map. Now you need to put optional operator because when you're doing programming in real life, if you don't have optional operator and data returned undefined, you're gonna be in trouble. Your template is gonna collapse. But you need to do, honestly, you need to, after you learn JavaScript, you need to learn TypeScript. TypeScript prevents a lot of errors. So you kind of need to learn how to use it. Whoops, what the hell is going on here? So we need element and index. I stands for index, right? So we want to cons, we want to do structure, take element. Am I recording? Am I recording? Yeah, I am. Yeah, okay, cool. So we want to take probably name. We're gonna use it as key, and we want to take image from here. Return. It's gonna be a div with a class. We're not gonna put anything into the div. So class name is gonna be, let's just put single item. It's gonna be our single item. Key, because you need key in React, we're gonna use name plus index. Index is usually not a good idea. Normally you want to put ID, and ID should be taken from something like in here. Where you have like an ID generator, you see? And you can just use them. But for simplicity purposes, we're just going to use index, right? Now, object IDs are very important because when your application is going to get super massive, like, I mean, enterprise level, scalable application, you need object IDs. Otherwise, it's going to get super messy. Okay. Again, my apologies for complexity. I just don't know how to make it easier. Okay, so the next thing we want to do, we want to save it, right? And we want to create, we want to put images as a background, right? So the way to do that is style, background, image, right? Background image has URL property, I think, right? URL. And then here we insert our imported image. Like this, right? And now we need to give single image height and width of the frame. Right, so I think single item, which is this thing here, width 100%, height 298 maybe. Yeah, so it's gonna look like shite, right? Because we need to add background. I'll show you what we need to add. Background positioning, basically, that's what we need to do. Like this. You see now it's going to basically spread the background image into the container. Okay, so our next problem is we need to move elements to here, right? So the way we do that is we need to take slider box, right? And we need to display flex. Like this. Okay, so you're gonna have this problem. To solve this problem, you need to put minimum width in here, min width, and then whatever this thing is, right? So we need to factor in two borders, right? So 298 pixels, I'd say, probably. I'd probably even say 296, because there are two borders. Because you have to remember, there is blue border, that's, oh shit, it's 2 pixels, god damn. Yeah, so they are two pixels, right? So there's 2 pixels, so that's 4, and then it's the same on the same side, so 8. So this probably has to be 292, something like this. And then this will fit perfectly into the container. Yeah. But we'll deal with that later. We will deal with that later. Okay. Alright, so what do we need to do next? We need to... Okay, so the next thing we need to do, we need to create buttons so we can move this left and right. Alright, so let's just create buttons. Let's make it like, no, it's not gonna, maybe it will, no, it's not gonna work like this. Because I positioned it to the center, right? Yeah. Okay, so in here we're gonna do flex direction. Column. And this is because so this will be an HR element, and a div, and then button, left, right. We don't actually even see the anyway, it doesn't matter. So you see now this is what it looks like. Now if we do it without the flex direction column, it's going to be like this, you see. That's why I moved the column, so the flex direction works. But I mean, again, it's up to you. Like this is completely whatever called sugar code, decorative code. You can do it whatever the hell you want, any way you want. Okay. So now we need to declare its state. Const index. Now you're gonna get confused. Index of visible. Set index of visible. Okay, we're gonna go for 0 first, okay? Right, so how do we move these elements? We use slider box. We need to style, right? Like this. Transform, translate. Translate X is going to be pixels, right? And here we're gonna put index of visible multiplied by I think 292. Okay, and now for buttons we need on click event. Now I'm doing it this way because I'm gonna be adding more functionality to buttons. This is why it's like that. What is it complaining about? Okay. So this is what, left button? Yes, so it's gonna be -1. And then we need the same code for right, which is gonna be +1. Okay. Whoops. Yeah. So now you see, we're moving it to the right. Now we're moving it to the left. Right? It's a good idea to add count, like use effect, create use effect hook, and to index, and then console log like this. So we can see, okay, so click on right, it moves it that way. So we want to move it to the right, we're gonna plus. Actually, it should be reverse. My apologies, yeah. Yeah, it should be reverse. So this should be plus, this should be minus, I think. Now you can do it in that other way, but it's easier to do it with the reverse. So, oh, whoops. So this is 0. When we click on right, it should be +1. Okay, I'm trolling. My apologies. So this is -1. This is +1. So we start, we click right, it's on 1. Oh, yeah. The offset should be minus, I think, right? Yeah. Yeah, now it's working correctly. Okay. I wonder why single item doesn't have covering per item. Anyway, we'll deal with that later. Okay, so now what do we need to do next? Okay, we need to make it so. Okay, break time. I'll be back 1 second. Okay, dokes, so I am back. Where were we? Yeah, we were on... So we were here. Alright, so what we need to do is... Once... We need to make a copy of this slide here. Right, so once we reach this slide like this, it will go back to this. Likewise, we need to make a copy of this slide in here. So once we reach this slide here, like this, it will do this, basically. Okay, so that's what we're going to do right now. So we need to go into data, we need to create copy, so we need to create dummy of last slide. Right, so we need to put last slide in here. And we call this, I don't know, 5. So now we need to create another one. It's called dummy of first slide. So we need to take first slide. I'm gonna put it. What's the ID on this? Gonna be 6. Okay, so it's gonna be 6. Oh shit! I forgot about this. So this will be 6. Okay. So that's the effect. Once we reach this guy here, it will slide us back to here. Once we reach this guy here, it will slide us back to here. Alright, I know it doesn't make sense, but we need to do it. You'll see why. You will see why. Okay. Okay, so index visible. Okay, so here's how we do it. So what's the value of index? Hold on a sec. What's the value of index in here? So value of index right now is 4. So when it reaches 4, it should, no, when it reaches 5, it should jump to 1. Alright, so let's do that. So if is equal to 5, we want to set it to 1. Okay. So you see, this way we can always slide, and we are always within the we never run out of people. Does that make sense? Because if we don't do that, then if we remove this, we're just gonna go beyond the index, you see? That's the problem. So we want, once we reached this one, which is the clone of the first one, it automatically jumps here. That's kind of the logic. That's how you keep the client inside inside the whatever, how many. Okay, so now once we reach here, index 0, we want to jump to 4. So once we get to if, what was it, once we reach the 0, we want to jump to 4. Okay, so now there should be no problem in terms of we can never overcap. Right, okay. Okay, so I'll show you the effect. So let's now add a frame overflow hidden. Let's do this. So now you see there is no white. You cannot go beyond the index. It's always jumping correctly. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's fixed. That is fixed. Alright, so I'm gonna remove this so you'll be physically able to see it. It's much better. Okay. So what do we need to do next? We need to create animation. Alright, so now comes the difficult part. All of this, like index resetting, mambo jumbo, is easy stuff. Now comes the difficult part, right? So first we want to create animation, which is transition 0.5 seconds, right? So now this is where we're gonna have issues. Do you see? You see, it jumped. It kind of slides the whole thing over. It looks like shit, honestly. Do you see? So what we want to do, once animation happens, we want to stop the animation, right? And we want to instantly jump and then resume the animation. Right? I don't know how to explain it to you, but you see what I mean. So we need to create a new class which is called no animation, right? So this will disable the animation, which is gonna be transform, I think, right? Transform, okay. So transition, transform 0 seconds. Alright, so we basically change the transition to 0 seconds, okay? So that's one thing we need to do. Alright, so we need to disable the animation, right? Okay. And we're gonna apply this animation to the slider box in here. Alright, so okay, now we're gonna use a framework which is called class names. Now, check out how it works. It basically allows you to conditionally apply classes, right? You can do it without the framework, but I would highly recommend you use this framework. It is so much easier, all right? So the way we're gonna do, we're gonna apply a class like this. So class name, so this is the name of the framework. So this is the standard class, right? We put the standard class into it. We don't need to mess around with this, right? So now we create an object inside of this thing. We put the class name into the object as a first key. Alright, so we're going to be controlling this animation. And now we're creating condition in here. So do you see how it works? Like it works class name that you want to use, and then condition. Right? And that, all of that is inside the object. I mean, it takes 5 minutes to learn this to learn this framework. I would highly recommend you use it. Right? We're gonna apply this no animation when index equals to 5, I think, right? Or, well, let's do 5 first. Now, the only thing that this, unfortunately, when you format using prettier, it removes the this thing is from the class. So you see, you need to get used to visually that the first is actually a class name, not a variable. It will annoy you in the beginning, but over time you'll get used to it. You see, because this is a class name, but if you save it, it will remove the question with the quotation, which is a little bit annoying. Honestly, it's a little bit annoying, but whatever. Now there is a way to overcome this, of course, but like you can just do this. Put double minus signs, and then it will brute force the quotations. You see, because it cannot. If you remove this, the prettier will not. So you see, we know that this class here is being applied with this condition. Alright, so let's see if it's going to work. No, it's still doing it, it's jumping. Oh. I forgot to save. My apologies. Hold on a second, it's not supposed to work like this. It should jump. Oh yeah, it disables the animation. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. Yeah, I don't know how to kind of explain it. It's just, you have to do it through intuition, I suppose. So, right, one problem is we need to make sure that animation happens. I think I started this early, honestly. Because what we need to do before this is... I'm gonna remove this for now. Actually, no, I can keep it. I can keep it. We need to put OR in here. Index of visible. Now, this is some logic. I know it's confusing as shite, but you just have to kind of follow along. Alright. So now it's jumpy. Now it's jumpy, right? We need to disable animation. No, it's not supposed to work like this at all. Maybe 4 and 1, I think, right? Let me try. Yeah. It's kind of working as it's supposed to, but it's very jumpy. So, you see? Because the next person you slide is gonna be this lady. Right, so... Right. We're gonna fix it, but I mean, I'm just saying that. That's the way it's working right now. Okay, so the way to fix all of this mumbo jumbo is you need to create a set timeout. Right, so that's the first step. Like, all of these are in the nodes. They're gonna be in here. Like, the logic is gonna be in here. Like, you will probably gonna have to do it a couple of times. If you're a beginner, you're probably gonna have to do this exercise like 5 or 7 times before you'll actually get it, you know? Like, I had to do shit like this like for 25 times. Because it takes brain very long time to figure out how to do it. Alright, anyway. So the first thing you need to do is we need to create a set timeout. In here, basically. Whoops, wrong one. So you want to basically have set timeout that then has a cleanup function. Well, you can probably maybe do it one time, but I mean, normally that's the way you do it. You have set timeout that fires, and then on component unmount, you clean up the set timeout. Otherwise, you're gonna have too many event listeners, which is not very good. Okay, so this timeout has to be the same as the animation speed, right? So, which is gonna be, and I put plus 1 second, right? So it's slightly longer than this one here. Like 1 millisecond longer. And we do the same for this guy here. I'm gonna replace it with this. So now you see we have slightly better experience, right? Look, you see? It disables animation, but then it works as intended. You see? Right? So now we need to tackle the problem where it disables animation. You see, as soon as we reach this guy here, it stops the animation. But we need to make sure that it continues, right? So the animation only stops once you reach this person here. Like you see, the problem is they're duplicated. There's a duplicate of this guy, right? So as soon as it reaches him, it stops the animation. You see, like this, right? As soon as it reaches, boom, you see that jump here. We need to fix this. So the way we're gonna fix it is we're gonna create a state that's gonna control that stop animation only if it reaches this slide and you are clicking right. Now you're gonna have the same problem in here. You see the jump, it jumps, right? So once it reaches this slide and you are clicking left, only then stop the animation. Does that make sense? I know it doesn't make any sense, but I mean you're gonna have to do this exercise multiple times, then you'll understand the logic. It's like, you know, it's trying to explain algorithm without you doing it. It's just not gonna work. Alright, you just have to do it multiple times. Okay, so the way to do that is we're gonna create a state, which is gonna be const direction. Set direction, use state. It's a string. I keep forgetting, it's not TypeScript. Okay. So now when we're clicking button left, right, we want to set direction to left. Okay. And then here we want to set direction to right, like this. So now we want to make sure that, okay, so we want to conditionally format this here. So as soon as it reaches so it has to be and direction should be equal to right, I think, right? And in here it should be and direction equals left. I guess, let's see. We can tweak them around just to make sure that they're working correctly, right? Okay, so we've done something incorrectly. So it stops the animation. Okay, we need animation to stop when you're clicking on right. And index is equal to 5, I think, right? So it stops animation in here. Let me just think about this for a sec. So it reaches 4. And we're clicking right, so this probably should be 5. This probably should be 5. Only then it stops the animation, right? Whoops. No. It should be 4. Okay, so it stopped the animation at 4. Let me just have a look. So this should probably be 4, not 5. Yeah. Oh, wait. Okay, this should probably be 4. No. How did I do it in my... I already have it. Okay, so... Count is equal to 5, so this should be... I'm just looking at this in here. Because it's like, the logic is trial... I was doing it through trial and error. And... Okay, so... So if count is equal to 0, so we set count to 4. Okay. And then... What did I put in the conditions? If count is 1, direction is right. Count is 4, direction is left. Okay, cool. Because that was the tricky part. And then here I did the reverse a little bit, right? Yeah, I did reverse. So if count is 5, which is index is 5, set it to 1. If index is 0, set it to 4. Okay, that's correct. Then if count is 4 and direction is left, stop the animation. And then here, if it's 1, direction is right. Yeah. That was the tricky part, that they actually reverse. So they should fix it now, I think, right? So yeah, you see now it's fixed. So you see now it stops animation, right? Jumps, and then condition is over, basically. You see? Stops animation, jumps, and that's how you get this effect. You see? Now we go here, stop animation, jumps, and resets the animation, because animation works with the condition. Right? So this part here took me a bit of time to figure out how to do. Okay, so the next problem we're gonna see is if you click very quickly, you can actually, how to say, you see, you can go outside the index. That's because animation, because of set timeout, right? So we need to disable the buttons until set timeout finishes. All right. So the way to do that is we create a const disable button set disable button to false, right? And then we need to put the button disabler in here, and we're gonna put this as a condition. Now I'm not gonna style them, but you can style them if you want. So it appears as if they're still active. Otherwise, okay, so now we need to disable buttons on the click, right? So we click, buttons are disabled, right? As soon as we click it. So we click, buttons are disabled. So you see now we click, buttons disabled. Now we need to activate buttons only after the transition has been finished, right? So the way to do that is we put set disable button to false here, false here, right? So this should fix it, I think, right? Yeah. So now we have a problem where if there is no jump, right, the buttons don't get activated, right? So to fix that problem, again, we put this thing here. It's gonna create another problem, but we will fix it as well. Look, so now we click, jump happens. That should be 25. So you see, buttons get disabled only when jump happens, right? Not. So you see, that's kind of like a inconsistent user experience. Sometimes buttons are instant, sometimes they're not, right? So to overcome that, we're gonna wrap this thing here with a set timeout that we already used in here. right? So it's going to be identical set timeout. Only we're going to remove the condition in it, right? So now there is a better way of doing it. Of course, you can create a function and just you know, use the set timeout, because there is a lot of code, duplicated code, especially this thing here, you see. So, but whatever. I mean, it's exactly the same code. This is not going to change that. So now you see we have consistency, right? Button gets disabled. We cannot click them. Alright, so the final stage is just to activate overflow hidden, and then that's it, it's done. So you see, now like we have this perfect. You can see a sample of this on this website here. That's where I got the idea from, you see? It's exactly the same. You see, like, the buttons are not working. I'm clicking, and it's not working. It's only it only works until animation stops, right? And then that's it. That's where I got the idea of disabling the buttons, basically. Now, there's another way of doing it, like if you can put a debounce function into it, you can put maybe, I don't know, if index reaches certain level, return, you can do that, probably. Yeah, but then it might mess with the call stack function. That's the best way to do it, honestly. You know what I mean? Because I mean that's just the best way to do it. I mean, if Mercedes are doing it, it's good enough for Mercedes. I mean, it should be good enough for us as well. But the other way of doing it is just put a condition where, let's just say, a return statement, I suppose, would be another one. But in the tutorial by DevEd, like in this tutorial here, I think that's the way he's done it, if I remember. He put a return condition. I'm not going to show you how to do it because like I don't want to. Because you see, like if I run into some kind of a bug, my brain is going to activate and be like, fix the bug, fix the bug, fix the bug. Then I won't be able to sleep. So it's working, you know. I've done what I wanted to do, so it's fine, you know. Because once you become a developer, like I mean, mid to senior level developer, you become very addicted to fixing bugs and you just want to fix everything. So sometimes it's very good to isolate yourself and not do things, you know, that might create problems because you're gonna end up fixing everything. You know what I mean? Okay, so yeah, so that's it. This is done. Any questions? Leave in a comment below. Like and subscribe. Take care. Bye bye.